I left my marriage to be with her and to be her partner through the end of her life. And we had a few months of this absolutely incredible, soaring, romantic joy, even while she was facing terminal cancer, because she had been very quietly in love with me for a long time too. So it was this finally we can be together kind of thing. And then the story took a very unexpected turn.
Well, Liz, welcome to Reclaiming.
I'm glad that we started by just talking about how the dead don't really leave, and then we can launch right into talking about this book.
I actually have these two quotes of yours that I'm going to mix around a little, because I felt like in very different ways they sort of grounded the conversation that I loved of yours of, I don't live by myself, I live with myself, which I really loved. And then grief is a bill that always eventually needs to be paid. I wasn't ready to pay that bill up front.
Yeah.
And so I just, yeah.
Yeah, those are good places to start.
Yes.
Which one do you want to start with? Should we unpack one of them?
I mean, either one. I mean, I was thinking about, I think just wanted to say, you know, in this deep way that I'm sure you hear from so many Gen X women, that because you're also Gen X, right?
Yeah.
And so just that sense of, you know, I think hearing, you've obviously been writing for 20 years now, almost 20 years. But, you know, for me, I was in graduate school living in London, halfway through my master's program in social psychology when Eat, Pray, Love came out.
Yeah.
And so it was just such a, it was such a moment, I think, for me, and most of the women that I knew in my program were all much younger than me. So I think that book helped me feel a little less alone in some of the places where I was in my life, even though your experiences were so different. There was something about emotional truth that you really captured in that book that I think helps so many women that I know and myself express what we hadn't been able to express yet.
Thank you for saying that. And it makes sense that it would have made you feel a little better about where you were at what age, because I remember part of the thing that was so disorienting for me about the traveling that I did with Eat, Pray, Love was I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm 34. You know what I mean? Like, this is something people do when they're 19 or 21. Like, why is my life, here's how I saw it at the time, why have I mismanaged my life so much that I'm like out here trying to find myself through travel at this inappropriate age when I should be home, married, in a home, raising a family. It's incredible to me how many years it has taken for me to unwind myself from that expectative narrative of women of like, here's what you're supposed to be at this age. This incredibly limiting idea that you're supposed to be in a house with a husband and a child at a certain age, when that was never obviously my destiny.
Yeah.
But I still had a lot of, I think, healing actually to do from the insistence that that's the only way that you can mark and make sure that you're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And I wasn't at that time. And I never have been. I've never been where I'm supposed to be.
Me either, honey. You know, whether that's physically, spiritually, emotionally.
Same. But to your point of the first quote that you said of I live with myself, not by myself, wherever I am, I'm with myself now.
Yeah.
And that's I think what the evolution of my life has been all about, is learning how to be present to wherever I am, whether I think I'm supposed to be there or not.
Yeah.
Like, well, here is where we are, dear.
Right.
You know, and
but
I've got your back.
That can be the hardest. It's so simple, but it is so difficult to do.
Yeah.
I think of just the practice of, I don't want to say being present with yourself, because that now feels a little sometimes overused in ways, but being connected to yourself in those moments, whether that is, for me, I think a lot of the work I'm doing right now feels that it's about recognizing which parts, right? Who's here? What age is here? Who are the different, you know,
who needs help and support right now?
Yeah, exactly. And how do I do that? Or how do I, you know, maybe even quiet that part and try to let the present time, more adult me,
Yeah.
drive the car.
Yeah.
So
You said about how being present to yourself is almost overused, and I feel that too. And I also feel that about the sort of casual way that people say, you got to learn to love yourself, as though that is a simple thing.
Right.
But what I've landed on, and I feel like this is attainable for me, is learning how to be a good friend to myself. And so self-friendliness is what I aspire to, because when I realized that I speak to myself sometimes in a voice that if a stranger spoke to me that way, I would call the police.
Right.
Or if someone spoke about a friend of mine that way in front of me, I would end that relationship.
Yeah.
Like I'd be like, you are absolutely not allowed to speak about my friend that way. And yet I sort of have given myself permission over the years to use like just absolutely hideous language in my inner voice. And so transforming that into a voice of friendliness, which is like, this is my friend Liz, and like everyone else can come and go, and they will, whether we want them to or not. Even people who don't want to leave have to leave, because death takes people. Like everyone will come and go.
Right.
But this is my friend who I'm going to walk through this journey with.
Yeah.
And that attitude of turning toward myself, recognizing myself as a friend, and being friendly toward myself, and no matter what I'm in, has been a game changer.
Yeah. I mean, even sometimes I find trying to use more affectionate language of how I'm talking to calling myself sweetheart.
Yeah.
It's so interesting you're saying that about the being the friend, because yesterday afternoon I was thinking about, it sounds so kind of like an almost obvious thought in some ways, but I hadn't thought it before, of it would be really nice to have me as a friend. Like, I'm a really good friend. I'm a good person. I fuck up a lot, try to take responsibility when I do. But I just thought, like, I'm lucky with my friends, but that idea of, okay, this is what I bring.
Yeah. I love that. What a beautiful realization. So how lucky you are that you're the person that you get to spend the most time with, if that person is a good friend.
Right. Yes, I do. Thankfully, I live on my own for now. And so I do thankfully enjoy my own company. Though sometimes I think loneliness is there. I don't know what your experience with loneliness is.
I'll tell you my experience with loneliness. The loneliest I have ever been in my entire life, if I can think of like the top 3 loneliest moments of my life, there was someone in the room. In fact, there was someone in the bed. Sometimes 2 is far lonelier than 1.
Wow.
And there's an aching loneliness that I have experienced, like a I don't even want to be here alive anymore loneliness that I have experienced when I am with someone who I am not connecting with, and I feel that absence of that connection, and that has been like existential loneliness. There's no loneliness I've ever felt alone that can rival that. Wow. And actually, it's been a long time. I mean, I've been celibate and solitary for the last 6 years now. And I often say, I've got the best roommate. Like, Liz is my roommate. We like all the same stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's
don't have to fight over what you're going to watch.
Oh my God, you also want to sit in the bathtub and eat popcorn and watch the Great British Baking Show? Like, score, like we have all the same interests. We love all the same people. Like there's this sort of gloriousness that I'm discovering of like, you know how it is when you've got a partner and there's some people in your life that they might not like. Like I love all the people that I love. Yeah. And I also love the great joy of not ever having to check in with somebody about anything that I want to do. So I was just in Costa Rica for 2 weeks. There was no one I had to clear that with. Right. You know, like there's no one I had to be like, hey,
would it be okay?
Would it be okay if, like, I kind of almost never want to hear those words come out of my mouth again. Like, would it be okay if I? Yeah. You know, it's just like, no, it's only, I'm going to, I'm going to do this now. And so, yeah, I found self-partnership to be deeply gratifying.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, this is one of the things I was really curious to talk to you about, sort of your journey of celibacy in a way, because I think that I don't know if it's a function of age or a function of the times we're living in now, if it's more of a conversation that I feel like people are having.
Yeah.
Because I think people are, well, I'm curious why you think maybe more people are looking into that and why it's changing. Because I think there has been a stigma around that in the past, or at least that was my experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of things to say about that.
Okay.
First of all, I did enough research in that field.
Right.
For 35 uninterrupted years of deep in the paint enmeshment and codependency with whoever I was with, often overlapping one person to another, right? So like 3.5 decades nonstop in super intense sexual and romantic relationships.
Yeah.
Not one of which I would trade. And I can say that quite earnestly now because
Wow.
I've processed and learned from every single one of those. Not one of which I would want to do again.
Right.
And
okay, that's a great way to put it.
you can not want to
Right.
do something again and still appreciate that you did it.
Right. That's great. That's valuable.
Really, that's a key difference. But I'm deeply fascinated in having this experience now because it's almost like there's door A and door B. And door A is everything I've always done, that I've done a million times with a whole bunch of different people. And I know what I get in that. Like there's a range, there's a range of excitement to irritation, abandonment to despair, connection to, I know all that is contained in there. And then there's door B, and it's just this giant question mark that I'm walking through now. And I'm like, I actually don't know what's on the other side of this door. And few women in history have been able to find out because it hasn't been permitted. And actually there's this amazing book called The History of Celibacy by a Canadian writer. Her last name is Abbott.
Okay.
And it's a history of celibacy of all kinds. And she explains something really interesting about the spiritual history of celibacy and the difference between that with women and men.
Right.
And where celibacy has been an important part of men's spirituality in certain spiritual practices, but it's always about the man conquering lust. And it's sort of like a proof of strength. It's like, I'm a yogi who has completely managed to defeat lust and desire, and therefore I'm king yogi.
Okay.
Women choose celibacy for freedom. Men choose celibacy for power.
Okay.
Women choose celibacy for freedom. Women traditionally have entered into monastic settings so that they did not have to be a wife and a mother, so that they did not have to be in sexual service to anybody, and so that they could be free to be educated, to be around other women, to be able to.
Before before contraception, right? I mean, it's sort of
and also childbirth was deadly.
Yeah,
so
I think there's
it's like maybe I don't want to do this because maybe I want to actually survive.
Right. But also I think the spiritual part is really interesting. And I think that's something that I have thought more and more about in the last, 10, 15 years as I think this kind of process of involution that I went through personally of integrating my experiences and healing, trying to heal all the things of that sense of sex is an energetic exchange.
Yeah.
And so it is, who do you want to give your energy to? Who do you want to mix your energy with? Who do you want to let inside your temple?
Yeah.
All of those things. And so it's just been interesting for me to hear, because I remember probably, maybe it was like 15, 20 years ago, was probably the first time I met someone who said, I haven't had sex for 10 years. And I remember thinking a lot of not great things about what that meant.
Oh, yeah, I would have too 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was, of just what's wrong with her?
Yeah.
Why doesn't anyone want her? I mean, all the awful programming,
right.
And so I think that what has been really interesting for me to see sex and energy and celibacy and those choices. And as we were saying before about how the conversation has been changing.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to observe in myself, how I see it differently and understand it differently. And think about the periods where, that's happened intentionally, unintentionally, where that feels different to me.
Yeah.
So, and how I like the word you used, unwinding, but how we're still kind of unwinding around just the programming, socialization.
Yeah. I mean, women have not had any choices for all of history. So it takes a minute. We don't have centuries and centuries of completely liberated female ancestors to look to see how did you do that? Because they were doing what they could within where they had to be.
Right.
Where they had no choice but to be. And so we've got all these choices, which is also sometimes overwhelming. But right now, this is a choice that I'm loving, and I'm loving that, I'm my energy is so deeply attuned to whoever is in the room, and I instantly start serving. I instantly start compromising, and I instantly start serving, and I instantly start pleasing.
Right.
Those are the things that I do in any relationship, when somebody is in the room. And so there's the fact that I get to live by myself means I don't have to attune my energy to anybody else's mood ever until I step out of the house and into the world. But I do have those multiple hours a day where the only person I need to attune to is myself. And that's radically new for me.
And I want to be mindful of the distinction. Like it's a privilege to be able to do that. Not necessarily, in some ways, one can have to be privileged to be able to do it, but it's a privilege to be able to, recognize that. And and be able to do it. I was, I listened to this quote that was great of yours that I'm going to go to because it felt like it was this whole thing of the cost of female desire. And there was this amazing place you were talking, I think you were talking about from your novel, City of Girls. And I'm going to go to it, and how female desire that doesn't end in female ruin. And you actually referenced me, and you said Bill Clinton got a presidential library and Monica Lewinsky got a punchline. Which was very accurate. And so I'm curious of how you see, to tell me more, how do you see that changing now? Is it changing? I mean, in our world today.
Yeah, I think your face and the expression that it just made.
I know. Maybe I'm just grappling for hope. I mean, for me personally, it's different. I'm not just a punchline anymore.
Exactly not. And you have done that. So I think that the fact that you have done that you have taken your name back and created through your own intelligence and your own compassion and your own courage, an entirely different association.
Thank you.
And that could not have been easy, and you also didn't have to do that, but you chose to do that, and you elected to do that, and you continue to do that, which leads me to my answer about, is it getting better? If I look at the culture at this moment, certainly in the United States, no, obviously not. We're taking a million steps back with what's going on in the culture right now. Gains are just being swallowed and ripped up and thrown away. And the patriarchy isn't even pretending that it doesn't want to be the patriarchy anymore.
No.
And there's a way that women are supposed to look if they're Republican now. There's this whole, there's this.
And the trad wife.
The whole thing, right? And so that can be very despairing. However, one woman at a time, we can transform this completely. Your life, you made, right? My life, I made. Nobody modeled this for us.
No.
There was nobody who came before you who could have told you how to handle what you had to go through. And there is not a single woman in my family whose life looks remotely like my life. And so one at a time, we can say the most powerful 5 words that a woman can speak, which is, this is not working for me. This isn't working for me. This isn't working for me. And I'm not going to wait for the culture to transform before I transform.
It's really interesting.
I'm going to transform. The culture can catch up with me or not, but here's what I'm doing. And when you do that, and when you step out on that, as you have done, then suddenly, as has happened with you, there's this wave of women following you saying, wait a minute, leaning in, being like, how did you just do that? How did you just do that? And am I allowed also to do this?
What's interesting to me about what you're saying specifically with my story is I have this really firm belief around collective stories, that people who get seared in the minds of a collective consciousness, that there's kind of this dance that it's like you can only shift if somewhere there's an opening in the collective to be able to receive it. And you can only shift in some ways as much as the collective is ready. I mean, there's the personal work you do. But I found that with all of the different ways of, like, I was a producer on Ryan Murphy's American Crime Story on impeachment. We can get as far in telling that story. The process is going to end up with something that the collective's ready for. I'm EPing a project that's coming out soon on Amanda Knox, and she's also an EP on the show. We've been able to go farther in how are we telling a story? What part of the show what part of the story do we get to tell in the show? It's a reflection of some part of the collective culture.
And, Monica, you took a chainsaw and cut a doorway into that wall.
I think that's hard for me to take in. So
that's how I see you.
Okay, well, thank you.
But that's what I see.
So
that opening also you made.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's very complicated for me to take in some of the positive things. I think because I became a public person from something so negative, and it hurt not only myself and changed the trajectory of my life, but hurt a lot of people, and caused a lot of complications for the country, a lot of complications in a number of different families and pain in those families. And so it's something I continue to work on. I've had to work on it really hard too, around even just as a woman and money, of like, I have a right to earn an income, even if it's coming from things that happened from before, this is where I am. I have a right to earn an income. I have a right to support myself, or, the value there. It's so hard for women, I think, in many ways. And
there's nothing more honorable than a woman supporting herself.
Yes, that is, that's a really interesting statement.
I think so.
You mentioned something else too, a few minutes ago, about the kind of, I don't know, people pleasing is that, but you have in your new book, which I haven't even mentioned yet, All the Way to the River, right?
You got it. Yep.
Okay. Where was it? It was, Savannah Guthrie. Actually, we did in this studio, and I kept saying the name of her book wrong. It's like, okay. But you have a chapter in your new book on it's called A Brief History of Female Overgiving.
Yeah.
Right. And and we were touching on that before, and I'm just so curious, to hear more from you on how this chapter came about.
Yeah.
I know that this is in service to this bigger story that you tell that we'll get into, and I want to hear more on with Rhea.
Yeah. I can talk about that in the context of the book. So All the Way to the River is, and you got the title right in one, nailed it.
And also I want you to, I'm just going to give you all the things, tell us why it's titled that too. So give me the spiel.
I'll give you the spiel. I fell in love with my best friend, and I was married to a man who I loved very deeply. And my best friend was this woman named Rhea Elias, who I knew for almost 20 years. And very, very, very slowly over the years, that relationship transformed from colleagues to friends, to social friends, to neighbors, to dear friends, to best friend, to this is my person, to I can't live without you, to, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm married and I want to be with you. And that happened very, very, very slowly. And then she was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic and liver cancer and given 6 months to live, at which point it was no longer possible for me to hide that information about the way that I loved her, from myself, from my husband, or from her, or from the world. And I had been hiding that, compartmentalizing that very tidily up until that point. And then the bottom blew out of it. And so I left my marriage to be with her. and to be her partner through the end of her life. And we had a few months of this absolutely incredible, soaring, romantic joy, even while she was facing terminal cancer, because she had been very quietly in love with me for a long time too. So it was this finally we can be together kind of thing. And then the story took a very unexpected turn, which now that I look back on it, and in many ways, this book is a forensic exploration of like, how did we get here? How did this happen? Where this love story went to such a dark place. But she was a cocaine and heroin addict in recovery who went back into active drug addiction during the time of her cancer. And I went into, and this is what I couldn't see at the time, but what I can see now, the same level of degradation and darkness that she descended to in active addiction, I descended to in active codependency. Because for every depraved drug addict, there's somebody who loves them dearly and wants to, ideally a woman, ideally a Cancerian, who's like,
or a cusper,
I will move heaven and earth to, to make sure that every single one of your needs is met as somebody becomes a vampire. And I become the vampire's assistant, essentially. And it's not the first time in my life that I have done that. And it wasn't the last time in my life that I did that. And so the book tells the story of our love story, the beautiful parts of our love story, the dark parts of our love story, and me really trying to figure out, like, how in the world did I end up in such a dramatic and traumatic story?
Because she went back into her addiction.
Fully. Fully. And she was not a nice addict. I remember her nephew at the time saying, I wish Rhea was a nicer drug addict. She was not. And it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. And it was like one of these karmic traps that you get into in your life. Ram Dass always spoke about the karmic predicaments that we find ourselves in. And there is nobody who will not at some point find themselves cornered in a karmic predicament. And this one was, how do I get my dying drug addict clean? Because she's also dying. And so she has no motive to get clean.
Right.
Like she's a hospice patient. Why in the world should she give up cocaine?
Like, I mean, that was kind of the thought I had.
That's the thought I had when she started using cocaine, which is why I bought cocaine for her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, I get it. Like go ride or die, like go out.
Yeah, and who like the
Nobody
amount
would
of
judge it.
like energy and time, that one has to spend, I think, trying to sometimes battle against our darker natures, right?
She didn't have, and also when I think back on it, I remember that for years, I mean, there are different kinds of addicts in recovery. And now that I'm in recovery myself, I see there are people who do experience the miracle of a higher power taking that thing from them so that it is just no longer even something that they have the slightest interest in. Rhea was not that kind of addict in recovery. She never stopped missing heroin, and she never stopped missing cocaine, and she never stopped longing for it. And she didn't do it because she knew it would kill her. But she used to say to me, long before she had a terminal cancer diagnosis, if I ever get a terminal cancer diagnosis, I'm going to get the biggest speedball in the entire world and shoot it in my arm. And she was like, I'm just going to go out. And she did do that, but she didn't die. And she ended up living for an additional 6 months in this state of absolute depravity that I also was pulled into. So the book is about, how do we find ourselves in these situations where we are so lost to ourselves, and how do we find our way back home to, this is my friend Liz, and I'm with her on this journey. And so when I turned the book in, and it's also about love addiction and sex addiction and drug addiction and recovery and the spiritual remedies for all of these things, because I do think that that's where I found my remedy, is that it's got to be a spiritual remedy. There's nothing on earth that can save me from myself except a higher power. But when I turned it in, my editor asked me, going back to your question about that chapter about a brief history of womanly overgiving, she said, is there a way that you can kind of expand this out of your story and talk about how women in general do this? And that was a very easy chapter for me to write, because I had researched it from my book Committed, that's about marriage. And it's quite disturbing when you look at the sociological data about the impact that marriage and intense relationships have on women.
Right. Isn't it that men who are married live longer?
Yeah.
But women I think don't.
So it's quite simply the exchange is equal. The amount of extra years that a man gets for being married to a woman, and no studies, by the way, to my knowledge, have been done on same-sex relationships and how that it implies. But what I say in my book is, I think the thing you need to look at is who's playing the traditional role of the woman in this story. Because the traditional role of the woman is, I will take care of you.
Right.
I will take care of your every need. I will take care of the every need of everybody in your family. I will take care of the every need of everybody in this family. And I will always, always, always come last.
Yeah.
And so men benefit tremendously from that. It's called the marriage benefit imbalance. It's a sociological fact. The very best thing that a man can do for himself is to marry a woman. He will make more money. He will live longer. He'll be physically healthier. He'll be happier. He'll be less likely to commit suicide. He'll be less likely to suffer from drug addiction. He'll own more property. There's like no measure at which he does not benefit. And the exact opposite, to the exact same degree, is true against women getting married.
Right.
And so married women live less long than single women. Married women have less money than single women. Married women have more illnesses, physical, mental, and spiritual, than single women. More likely to commit suicide. More likely to die of homicide. Most likely at the hands of their partner. Less likely to own property. Less likely to advance in their careers. Less likely to report themselves as unstressed. Like it's grim.
Yeah.
And there are ways to mitigate that. The older you are when you get married, the more education that you have, the longer you wait to have children, all of those things will narrow those differences. But those differences are stubbornly still in place. And what we can conclude from this is that women give their lives, literally their life force, to whoever they love. And that has traditionally been the job of a woman, right?
Right. I mean, it's complicated because there is, if you sort of believe in a Darwinian evolutionary perspective, right? There's that sense of we do make the being in our body, and that's part of our both our purpose in some ways, or how it's been defined. But if you, from that bigger picture of how does the species keep going, right? And so, but I wonder if it's not this, I took a class in graduate school called Culture and Cognition. Not that I remember much from it, but that idea of where these things clash. And it's interesting because it's hearing all that makes you think there's kind of a chink that happened somewhere in the path, right? On the cultural part,
right? Of
how did we go from not just creating and giving life and nurturing that to nurturing everybody around us,
right? Because you did not give birth to your husband.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet,
yes, gosh,
if you're like me, you treat it like a giant baby that you I baby everybody who is around me. It's like I am the mother of all the thing, like whoever needs nurture.
I'm pretty maternal too, I think. I've had Mother's Day is sometimes hard for me because I don't have kids and I always wanted kids. And a number of my friends have often, reached out to me and just said, but, remember this maternal instinct you have, that you helped birth this in me, or birth, which is so, I have amazing friends. I'm very lucky. Like I had an anomaly of a very bad one a long time ago, but so I'm lucky that way. But
yeah. And it's what you talked about replicating the species, like from a biological standpoint, from a mere physical animal standpoint, our only job is to replicate ourselves, right? That's a biological thing that is true of every living thing. Your job is to pass on the genetic code so that this species can continue. Given the state of the earth right now, it's debatable whether it's essential for humans to keep doing that, or like there's other ways. But also, I think I take that at a more sort of spiritual and broader question for myself, which is, what that essentially means is, what are you leaving behind? What information have you downloaded that you can pass along, right? Because genetic code is just information.
Yeah.
It's just like data that gets mixed and blended and then passed along. And so for me, the books that I write and the work that I do in the world this is my progeny. Like I've downloaded this information from the cosmos.
Yep.
I've assembled it, and I'm handing it on because this is how I'm perpetuating and making sure that when I leave, that information remains.
Right.
You know?
Well, and that, isn't that at the core and the heart of creativity?
Exactly.
You know, I was really interested in reading the part where you were talking about how you've started, I call it self-directed art therapy.
Yeah.
But there's kind of, in the book that because that's sort of I think I started doing that a couple years ago, and just the sense both of having a creative activity, right? But then also what's coming through me in this different way of a different creative channel to writing, or, singing in the shower, or, or making children, or, or cooking. I don't cook. So,
the other thing is, like, the creative urge is a more recent download to the human brain in terms of evolution.
Oh,
right?
really?
So the
Okay.
biological urge to replicate is true of any one-celled creature also has that. You know what I mean? So this is like that replication, reproduction thing is sort of at the very bottom of what we're, what we're here for. And then in the last at least 100,000 years, there's been this tremendous transformation of the human brain and this frontal cortex and the changing of our whole biology to accommodate all this intelligence that includes this urge to create. And this urge to make something more beautiful than it needs to be, which is my favorite definition of art.
Yeah.
To make something that nobody needs. Why, I mean, we need chairs, but somebody gave thought about why this color, why this shape, why, because it's pleasing, it's comfortable, like this desire to adorn and to transform the world and to leave a different kind of a mark. And I feel like we're on this cusp of this next, if we can survive ourselves, this next level of spiritual evolution.
Yeah.
Of how do we live together, and how do we survive these minds that have this much capacity to create and destroy.
Right. Reclaiming is brought to you by Audible. Are you looking for the perfect summer escape? Get ready to dive into Rich Girl Summer, the new Audible original from Lily Chu that'll have you swooning poolside. Broadway sensation Philippa Sue returns for her 5th Lily Chu narration, but this time with an exciting twist. She's joined by her real-life husband, the talented Stephen Pasquale. So picture this. Toronto's luxurious cottage country where the champagne flows and secrets run deep, heroine Valerie is a struggling event planner who suddenly finds herself playing the role of a socialite's long-lost daughter. But here's where it gets interesting. While she's trying to keep her fake identity under wraps, she's uncovering family secrets and falling hard for Nico, the family assistant who's impossible to read. Between maintaining her cover, solving mysteries, and navigating an unexpected romance, Valerie's summer is about to become way more complicated than she bargained for. So ready to escape into this entertaining romantic comedy? Listen to Rich Girl Summer, available now on Audible. Visit audible.com/richgirlsummer. That's audible.com/richgirlsummer. I don't know if you are hearing this. I feel like in my sort of spiritual circles, that we're at a real spiritual crucible.
Yeah.
And I think that that's some of what we're seeing in our world today.
Yeah.
Of what's being reflected to us is, this is the task. The task at hand is usually not easy.
No. It's objectively a very interesting time to choose to be born.
Yes. Was it one of my friends sent me a meme the other day? I love this whole new trend of like sending memes all the time.
I know, it's a love language.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's a favorite one of mine. But it was something about, I don't remember the first part. It was like, so I never fucking come back to Earth again. I'm like, yes, no thank you. No thank you.
I've said that for years, Monica, and everyone I know says that. They're like, I'm not coming back. I'm done. Something has shifted in me just in the last year where I'm like happy to come back.
Wow.
If I can be of service.
Thank
I
you.
think there's something that's happening where it's like, I think because there's a transformation of my own internal consciousness where I'm really understanding what it means to be of service and wanting to be of service, which I think is very different from being a servant, which is what women's lives have traditionally been. And I think again, going back to like withdrawing from traditional romantic and marital relationship and family relationship to a certain extent so that I can come into myself. I'm now like, okay, now I'm ready to serve, and happy to help where I can. And so that's why I feel like, if I die, I'll come back if I can help. If I can be,
wow,
if I can,
it's very impressive.
because there's probably somebody's going to need some help.
Yeah, as you said, if we're still
direction that
here,
it's going in. I mean, we certainly need it now.
yeah,
you know?
it's interesting. I've always been really lucky to have people in my world who are sort of spiritually ahead of me, who, you know, when they're sharing things, and at first I'm like, that's fucking crazy, you know, and
then 2 weeks later, you're like, I kind of want to try that.
more like 2 years. But it's interesting because what you're saying about the of service part, what came up for me was I was mentioning my friend Kat who passed away. I have 2 cats in my life. So one with the C who's still here and one with the K who's gone. But this one time, like Kat, we were making mandalas or something, or we were doing something, and it was about, you know, what we want. And I'm like, money and romance and, you know, this bag and all yeah, real spiritual here. And her whole thing was about, you know, or her birthday wishes would be whatever's for my highest good and for those that I love. And I was like, I could never do that. I could never, you know, because when I unpacked it, it was actually about trust, right? So there's that deep level of trust in to sort of just release and think, wow, whatever is coming to me is actually what is best for me, for my highest good. And
for the good of others, which can only mean everyone. And it's, you know, I'll share. I can't remember if I wrote this in the book, or it's just something that I've been thinking about, but I'm less and less interested in what I want, because I have a long history of wanting things that turned out to be very bad for me. Okay. And actually, it's apparently true of most humans. We're not good at knowing what's going to make us happy. We think we know, and then we're fucking sure we know, and then we're like, I'm going to manifest that. Yeah. This is why I think manifestation theology can be dangerous. It's like, be careful. Because I've manifested a lot of stuff in my life. I've made a lot of stuff in my life happen because it was my chief's heart desire. And I was like, I'm going to get this. I'm going to go after this. I'm going to have this. And then I got it. And God was like, I'm going to let you have that.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you have that.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be a really interesting experience for you. I'm going to let you have that.
Right.
And then I'm like, please take this away from me, you know?
Right.
Like,
well, there's that whole thing of
get me out of here. Yeah. Like, what have I just done? You know?
Right.
So that's why now I don't pray anymore for anything that I want.
That's really interesting.
I pray to be in alignment with the will of the universe. Like, let me be in flow of the Tao.
Did you have a moment where you arrived at that? I find sometimes for myself, it's only in hindsight that I'll see, oh, that's different, or oh, something shifted.
I would say that one thing that I can think of where I really did say to what I call God, I'm giving you my life. You know, like I'm giving you back what was never really mine anyway, was that after Rhea died, so Rhea died, she was in hospice, and she had these boxes and boxes, they'd give boxes and boxes of fentanyl patches that were there for her cancer pain. And after she died, the day she died, I just very quietly took them and I put them in my suitcase. She died in Detroit. And when I flew back to New York, I flew back with, I don't know, 6, 7 boxes of fentanyl patches. Wow. Multiple, I mean, the highest level of fentanyl, because it was for a dying cancer patient in a lot of pain. And I was like, I'm gonna take these. Yeah. And I took them home and I put them in my safe, and I thought I was a genius because I was like, if I'm ever in unbearable physical or emotional pain, I can go really easily with these. Wow. This is a really good, really easy way out. Because the doctor had explained to the hospice people had explained that if she needs to go, like she can put some of these on and she'll just go to sleep and it'll be gone. And I'm like, my little brain took that and was like, I want to control. Okay. I want to control the means of my death. And I don't ever want to be hopeless. I don't ever want to be helpless. I don't ever want to be in unbearable pain. Yeah. So I've got my little backup plan here. And then I came into 12-step recovery, and I came in for sex and love addiction and codependency. But once I was in there, I put down all substances within 6 months because I was like, oh, I see what it means to be sober. What it means is there's no escape plan. You just are here for this experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, whoa, this
Yikes.
is like, this is yikes, right? But I want to do this. I want to do this with my life. And I think I was 2 years into sobriety and I was having a really bad day and I was lying on my bed and I just thought, those fentanyl patches are just like right over there. And I sat up and I thought, oh shit, I wonder if this is the kind of thing you're supposed to tell your sponsor. Because I'm like,
well, it's suicidal ideation.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, should I tell? So I called my sponsor and I was crying and I was like, I don't want to tell you this because I don't want to lose this thing. And I told her about it. And I said, I'm afraid you're going to tell me that I have to throw them away. And she said, it still makes me cry when I said it, but she said, sweetheart, I am so proud of you for calling me. That's called intimacy.
Wow.
You're letting yourself be seen.
Yeah.
You're letting somebody see you. This is what intimacy is. And I said, are you going to make me throw them away? And she said, no, I'm never going to make you do anything. I'm not here to control you, but I love that you trusted somebody enough to call them and tell them about that fact that you have those. And then I was like, I think I need to throw them away. And she's like, that's okay. It's up to you. And there's a CVS around the corner that had like a mailbox that you could, no questions asked, just put any drugs or substances in. And I'd seen it many times and thought about it, but I was like,
I've never even noticed.
I'm like, I'm not getting rid of my fentanyl, you know? And, and I was like, I should probably let you know I have enough fentanyl to kill everyone in this building, you know? And she's like, okay, so why don't you do what you feel like you need to do? So I walked over there with her on the phone and I was weeping because I felt like I now have no power. Like that gave me this illusion of control. And while we were on the phone, she said, can I just ask you one question? Did it ever occur to you that if you were in unbearable mental or physical pain, somebody would help you? And I said, no, it never crossed my mind. And she said, I will help you if you're in unbearable physical or emotional pain. And a lot of other people will too, if you tell us that you are. And that's also intimacy, you know? And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And when I threw the fentanyl away and I walked away and got off the phone, I said to God, okay, I'm giving you my life. My life is in your hands and the moment of my death is in your hands. And I felt, this is something I felt a lot of times in my life, this great rollicking cosmic laughter. As God said, honey, it always was. Right? It always was, sweetheart. Like life and death are in my hands. Yeah. You know, like not in your hands, right? And it's like, oh, right, I just am so scared of life and I'm so scared of death that I wanted to control those things. So surrender is the opposite of that need to control.
It's interesting because it's come up for me a couple times in the conversation of just thinking about that we're having this conversation the week Andrea Gibson passed. And to see, I think it's one of the beauties of social media. There are not that many, but you sort of see across this wide landscape someone whose life and work touched so many different people. And I think there's that, it is a reminder of how little control we have of when it happens. And it is up to someone else. And those moments of, you know, what does it sort of say? Yeah. You know, what does the moment say?
And Andrea showed us that, because Andrea didn't want to die. I mean, no one wanted to live more than Andrea Gibson. And nobody was living more in the last months of their life than Andrea Gibson. Like right to the very end, they did not want to go. Like that was somebody who was fighting to live, and at the same time, dancing with mortality in a really interesting and creative way. So you can not want something, and at the same time accept it, and not just accept it, but look for the most creative possible way to engage with it. You know, and it's something that I felt. I mean, I feel like this is something each one of us will face in our Earth School curriculum, is that the thing you want the least to happen is going to, you know, at some point or maybe multiple times. And when Rhea was diagnosed and I heard 6 months to live. And I like the negotiating that I was doing with God was like, no, not this one. Like I have a long list of other people
Yeah.
who
I can add to yours.
if you'd like some feedback
Yeah.
on a couple notes, like, what really might benefit humanity. There's a bunch of other people here who maybe you want to give pancreatic cancer to, but not this one. I can't live without this one. This is the one I can't live without. This is the person I cannot live without. How very interesting that that's the one who was taken. So clearly something in the universe did not believe me when I said, I cannot live without this person. My friend Martha Beck, she has this great game that she plays where she takes the most codependent song titles and then adds little parentheses to them. And my favorite one is, I can't live if living is without you. And then in parentheses it says, yet here I sit eating a sandwich.
Like writing the song.
Yeah,
or,
like here I sit, and like clearly I'm like, yet here I sit eating a sandwich. Like I said, I can't live without this person, yet here we are,
Right.
And so something I had to find in me a whole different direction for my life that instructed me on how indeed do you live without the person that you can't live without.
Yeah. I found in my life what's been really interesting for me is when I'm able to, I go through something difficult and then the sort of pattern comes back again, but some part of me actually gained something from what happened before, and I do it differently.
Yep.
And it's then easier. And I may not necessarily see that at the time, of just sort of, but I observe it after,
Right.
So, and I had that a few years ago of just, I think part of how I ended up really stepping into actually beginning to reclaim my narrative was around, I'd had a whole plan and I had, I was going to do this and then I was going to do that. And of course it kept falling apart. And so finally it was, okay, I'm going to write this Vanity Fair essay. I have no fucking idea where I'm going to land, like how the world is going to receive this.
Yeah.
But everything had fallen apart before that. And thank God, because it ended up being the best thing that happened. And
You were cornered in your karmic predicament.
Yes.
No other choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when I found myself with my, then I came up with a new plan. Years later, it was like, oh, okay. Some part of me thought, oh, I can have a plan again. Time to have a plan, right? And then that plan fell apart and I moved through things faster.
Yeah.
I didn't get as low as I had before.
Yep.
And I started to also, for me, it was a time where I had to start to really accept, which is still hard for me, of I'm not going to have a small life. I don't get to have a small life.
Yeah.
So as much as that's what I really want,
Yeah.
every time I try to get small or have a plan to get small, that plan gets disrupted. And so that some of the work for me is around, and I think so many people experience this in different ways in their life is, right? How do you accept that? How do you accept that something is going to be different? How do you accept that your life is going to maybe be bigger than you thought it would be in different ways? And it is, it's so fucking annoying.
Super duper annoying that I think by the age of 40, at least, probably younger for most people, everyone I know could write a book called Not Exactly What I Planned.
Yes. Yes.
Like not exactly what I planned.
Mm-hmm.
But as to your point, when the bottom falls out again, and it's like,
Yeah.
there was a line that a friend of mine used to always say, which is like, I thought this was a parachute and it's a backpack full of bricks.
Yeah. Right.
Like, whoa, like I thought this was going to be this and it's this. A certain number of rounds of that, it's not necessarily that you start to love it, but there's a certain number of rounds of it where you're like, oh, right, we've done this. Like we've done this before. And so here we are again. Like here we are again where everything we planned didn't work. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the next right action? I give up. Like what do you when Rhea was dying and using drugs, and life had gotten so horrific and awful, and I wanted to kill her and myself. I went for a walk one day to get away from her and to get out of the apartment, and which I was doing constantly. Like I'd walk in the apartment, like say hi, look at her and be like, I gotta go for another walk.
Yeah.
Like I was like putting miles of walks, just like, I don't know how to deal with this situation. And I was walking down East 9th Street in New York City, and I was crying in public like I always do. And I was, and I started praying, but I had the weirdest prayer of my life. And I think the most courageous, and in a weird way, the most honest. And I opened my mouth to pray, but instead of saying, make this stop or make this go away or save me or fix this situation, I said, make it worse. I know. And I heard myself say it and I went, what are you saying? And I was like, my soul said it. My soul that came here to learn and to grow and to evolve and signed up for this exact Earth School curriculum so that it could learn things that could not be learned any other way. My soul said to God, make it worse, because I know there's some treasure in here for me that I have not found. There's something in here I'm not seeing. There's some gift in here that I can't discover. And don't take it easy on me. Take the gloves off. Like, I'd rather get to it. I want to see what the thing is. So if you have to like crush me under your heel into powder, do it so that I can be reborn as whatever the thing is that I'm supposed to be reborn as after I'm totally destroyed. But it was basically like, let's fucking do this. You know, like I'm here for this. Let's do this. And God obligingly made it worse.
Well, look how your plan worked.
God's like, well, I mean, I signified my willingness.
No,
you know?
I know.
Yeah, and like that was it. It's like I signified my willingness to be here for this thing, even though I didn't know what the thing was. And it got worse. And it got worse after Rhea died. And because there was a thing I couldn't see. And it was until like I had to go through a whole nother round of something like that again with another person before a friend finally sat me down for the second time. Thank God she did it twice. She did it once a year earlier and was like, there's a 12-step program for sex and love addiction. Maybe you want to check it out. And I was like, I'm good, you know? Like, and then I was like, went out and did some more research.
Right, exactly.
You know? And a year, then I was like, what's that program again? And because that was the thing that I couldn't see. What I couldn't see was, what is my role in the madness of my life? Why does this particular pattern keep repeating? I'm the common denominator in every single one of these stories. Why does it keep happening? And I couldn't see it until I could see it. And I'm really merciful about the fact that I couldn't see it till I could see it, because I couldn't.
Yeah. Well, that was actually something I was really interested to ask you, is just in so many of your different experiences and how open you are with sharing those processes for yourself of how do you find the self-love in those moments? How do you find the acceptance there?
Oh, honey, we're just doing the best we can. You know, like either Brene Brown said this so beautifully in one of her books, that she, when she was a social worker, was dealing with a family that was so dysfunctional and just couldn't get out of its own way and kept causing so much harm to themselves and other people and to their children. And it was just like a nightmare. And she was so full of contempt and disgust for these people. And her husband, who's a doctor, who works with a lot of people who are in a lot of suffering of different kinds, would say to her, like, they're doing the best they can. And she was like, but are they though? You know, like basically like do better, humans, you know, like that was the position that she was taking. And she was challenging him with that. And she's like, and one night she said to him, I hope I'm getting this anecdote right, but she's like, do you really, really, really think that everybody is doing the best they can? And he's like, I got to think about that. And he came back a few days later and he's like, I don't know, but I think when I see it that way, I am a happier person and a more compassionate person, and it's easier for me to be here on this planet. So I'm choosing to decide that is the truth. So if I can look at myself and everyone from a position of mercy for how difficult it is to be a person, how difficult it is to manage a brain, how difficult it is to manage our karma, how difficult it is to be in this particular moment of history, how difficult it is to be a woman, like all of this stuff, then it's like, I really have no choice but to say, man, this isn't easy. And I think when people meet at the heart level, it's like we're looking at each other and being like, this is hard, isn't it? And the other person is like, yes, it is, And then that's where we begin, as my sponsor said to me in that beautiful call, this is intimacy. You're letting me see how hard this is for you. And you're then therefore I now feel safe to show you how hard this is for me. And now we're together, right? And that has to be the way.
Right.
Even if the only person in the room who is receiving that mercy is me. So it's extending, again, going back to the very beginning of this conversation, the hand of friendship to somebody who is suffering.
Yeah.
And the Dalai Lama has spoken about that. Like when he's in pain, he's like, oh, this monk is suffering. This monk is suffering right now and needs compassion and deserves compassion. And when he spoke about guilt and about how somebody had come to him and asked if he could join his order and take the monastic vows. And he said, you can't because you're too old. This is something you have to start doing at a very young age. And the man subsequently committed suicide.
Wow.
And he spoke about the guilt that he felt that he had turned this person away and this person took their life.
Yeah.
But then he did this sort of spiritual awareness of like, there is also someone suffering here now. Like that man suffered and killed himself, and now I'm suffering because that man took his life.
Right.
And so I need to serve the one who is currently suffering, who is nearest to me, which is this one. And this one needs compassion, and this one needs mercy. So whatever you're in and suffering and struggling through, there's somebody right there who needs mercy and compassion. And everybody that I know wants to practice universal human compassion, but universal human compassion isn't universal if it doesn't include you.
Right.
So
and it's hard.
It's hard.
So both for others and for ourselves at times.
Got to start there. Yeah.
Or maybe the way to say it is, it's hard to grab for that or to reach for that when your tank's not full, when you're not, when things are not going the way you
planned or the way you want them to.
You're telling that story that Brene told in her book, and I'm thinking, most of the people in my life would probably say that I would come barging in saying, well, you're not doing the best you can, because if you followed my advice, my plan that I could give to fix this, clearly, then it would be fine.
Because I'm so great at life, look how well I've done.
Yes, exactly.
Look how everything always works out for me, which is why I know that what I think you should do is right. And that's how I humble myself constantly from wanting to tell everybody how to live, is like, let's take a little survey of Liz's life and the decisions that I've been so certain about were going to be great before I be out here fronting that I know how you should live. Like, I don't even know how I should live, right? I don't even know how I should live. And I also don't know that whatever that person is doing that I think they shouldn't be doing, that I'm sure is going to destroy their life, might not be. There's a poem I have in the book about this, a prayer. It's prayer for a recovering codependent. And the last line is like about how you don't know how hard their soul might have struggled in so many lifetimes to come right here to the cusp of collapse that is so necessary for their awakening. Don't interfere with it. They really might need to have this, like, I needed to have my rock bottoms, or I wouldn't have needed a higher power. Like, if everything went in my life the way I planned, I wouldn't need God. I wouldn't be interested in God. Right. Like, I wouldn't be interested in compassion. I wouldn't be interested in mercy. I'd just be out here being like, I'm killing it. I'm so good at everything, Do
you think do you think that exists?
I think there are people who believe that they're killing it, but I think that's called psychopathic narcissism. And that's a condition that we don't want to have. But even them, like, let me see your actual life.
Right.
Let's see how this is actually going. Let's see the wreckage that you're leaving in your wake and the damage that you're doing to others, right? They might not see it. As a woman in my Al-Anon group said to me when I first came in, God gives the brightest students the toughest assignments. And I was like, I don't want to be the brightest student. I want to be like a dunce in the back. And she's like, yeah, but you didn't choose to do that. You chose to awaken. And I really do feel that I did, that I chose to come here to awaken. And I would love it if the way that I had an awakening was at the ashram in India, eating really beautiful Ayurvedic food and sitting in a beautiful temple and chanting, and that's how I found God. But that is not how I found God. I found God on the bathroom floor. I found God at my rock bottom. And the God that I love is like, honey, if we could have done it gentler, faster. There's the gentle way or the fast way.
Right.
And do you want to go the gentle way or the fast way? And I chose the fast way. And the fast way is through suffering.
That's, everything you've talked about has been around reclaiming. But, I asked people at the end if there's anything they're working on reclaiming right now. So I don't know if there's...
My physical strength. I still have never gotten back to the physical vitality that I had before Rhea got sick. And the 18 months of that journey, which was now like 8 years ago, took something out of me at the physical level. And then the healing from it, the grieving of it, and the healing from it, the writing of the book, like the whole epic of that experience I feel like it cost me a lot of physical strength. And I'm actually going to be taking a sabbatical next year for 6 months.
Okay.
Which I've never done. No writing, no teaching, no talking, no interviewing.
Wow.
And I have 2 things that I want to use that time for. And one is to improve my Spanish. And
See?
And the other is to improve my physical health, which I think is going to be a combination of resting and strengthening. And
Those sound good.
I would like to, God, I remember like in the months after Rhea died, I kept saying to a friend of mine, like, I have no vitality. Like my vitality is gone. I long to feel energized and vital. So I'm giving myself the gift of that next year.
That's
and I think the
amazing.
timing of it will be pretty good after the release of the book.
Yes.
I think it's too much to ask myself to be able to revitalize before the release of the book.
Yeah. No,
because
that would be nice.
That would be nice, but it'll be after all of this is done. So that's the gift. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
So this is the question that I love to ask new people when I meet them.
Okay.
And you're a new person to me.
Yes.
What are you most excited about in your life right now?
This podcast feels like it's a part of that. I think there are a number of things that I have been putting energy towards in different ways. So, one that's happening next year that is something, the project itself took 10 years. Energetically, the seed, I've started nurturing the seed almost 20 years ago. And so that I'm kind of excited about seeing these things come out of the ground. And while the podcast was actually not something I was planning for a very long time, I think that it came out of things that had been swimming in me for a long time in that way. I think excitement is something like with joy. A lot of people who I've talked to for the podcast that, they'll talk about wanting to reclaim joy. I think we're living in times where we have to go hunt for it a bit more than normal. And I think excitement and joy can live near each other. So I think that's, I think it's something that I need to be open to more. So
it's a beautiful answer.
Thank you so much for this, Liz. Thank you.
Oh my God, what a delight to speak to you. And thank you for everything that you are and do in the world.
Thank you.
The untold numbers of people who you serve and help and shine light for.
Thank you.
We see you and we appreciate you and we honor you.
Thank you. Thanks. That's very, very kind.